Hi. Great presentation.
Thanks, Scott.
So I can speak about concerns people have in Brentwood. As many of you know, I'm sure Route, excuse me, Route 125 goes right through Brentwood. And that's a major concern for a lot of residents, just the speed and the amount of crashes that occur on that corridor. I would say people would be interested in some sort of access management study or corridor study for the corridor itself, and then certain intersections that are hot spots. The intersection with South Road is already on the highway safety improvement program, and there's some actions underway. I believe it's programmed to implement what the consultant recommended as intermediate solution, which is some auxiliary turn lanes, or they might have already been implemented, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I think people in town are interested in pursuing the long-term solution, which is a roundabout. Um, and then also the intersection with the rec center in town. There's some interest to improve that intersection, maybe look into a study to consider alternatives, but turn lanes, roundabouts, other things have been suggested there too. So yeah, those are my thoughts for Brentwood.
Steph, I have one question for you with the rec center, like intersections. Does that include like sidewalks, crosswalks, et cetera?
Yeah, there's definitely been interest in that too. So there are no sidewalks in town today, except at like a brand new development. There are a couple sidewalks in there, but on the main roads in town, there are no sidewalks. But there's definitely been interest in adding either sidewalks and or shared use paths to connect key locations in town, like to connect the school to the rec center and the library and those types of destinations.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else?
We're similar in Hempstead, but we have no sidewalks basically in town. But we have 121, 121A, Route 111, all cutting through town. Like in our town center, we have this crazy traffic island where Emerson Avenue meets Main Street 121. We have a lot of heavy traffic that comes down on Emerson, enters on Main Street through a yield. We asked about making that a stop sign. Concerns are we back up traffic on Emerson. In the summertime, with our recreation department, they have programs at the school, but then they also go down to the town gymnasium, which is right at that intersection. So you'll see a caravan of, 4 and 5-year-old kids with the council on the front and the council in the back, because there's no sidewalks. Very dangerous walking there. Our schools are relatively close. We have no necessary pedestrian access. I know it's been mentioned that that would be a great project for in town to have some kind of pedestrian access between the elementary school, the rec center, the town hall, and even possibly go to the middle school.
So to get between those now, are people, are they walking in the street or are they walking on the grass or do they even bother?
Some, usually you'll see more teenagers, younger people, because they're more able to jump up out of the way and jump up onto the grass. Usually the older people don't even attempt it. The old ladies that take care of the traffic island in the center there, they just run for their lives when they have to bus do their work in the garden there. There is no safe haven. Obviously speed of 121 on Main Street is a fact. It's a 30-mile-an-hour posting there, but it drops. Because if you're heading northbound, speed drops just before you enter the center, and when you're heading southbound, obviously speed drops just before you hit the center. People just don't realize they're supposed to travel like 30 miles or less versus 45 miles an hour, which is what they're traveling along.
And I know the big thing that always comes up is, and we always talk about is, it'd be great to have more enforcement everywhere. And we know, like realistically, it can't be, like, police departments are already understaffed. And they just can't be everywhere. So like, we can suggest periodic, switching of but as a whole, we're thinking probably maybe some education, like this piece for the action plan, we're gonna talk about, suggestions for physical improvements like sidewalks, crosswalks. The other thing is policies, education pieces, things that, do you need a public, outreach? Is there something like that that could be helpful for multiple communities, not just for one, but this is an issue on multiple communities, so maybe there's a way to do that, whether that's through an MPO, newspapers, websites, social media, what's the best way? Like, we can't dictate it, like, but we can suggest things because everybody's different. Some social medias are great and then some is not, so you gotta, so that, I'm thinking with your area,
We do have, speed signs, traffic signs. In the area, police department puts out their message board, in the area for speed. I put out my message board with the speed as well. So we try to educate the public, but even the message board sometimes turn into a traffic hazard because there's no place to go.
yeah. And that, is that the big ones?
Yeah, so
Okay.
police has smaller, 6x5, and then we have, I have the 10x8 board.
Yeah.
So I'd be more careful where I put my board versus where they put theirs.
Yeah.
And then we also have fixed, traffic signs. So your speed is,
Yeah,
so color changing based on what your speed is, we have those in the area as well.
and those, do you move those around or
Those are fixed.
those are fixed? Okay. That's something new that people are doing with the solar is putting it in a certain spot. And then people get used to it, so then we move them over, and then it kind of keeps people alert. And I've heard that some of them have that white flashing, and that doesn't help. Everybody thinks it does, but it doesn't, but. We're trying to get more feedback on that, but I didn't know if that type of stuff would be useful too.
I was actually color changing. So
Okay.
when you're doing an excess for speed, and they're red, and they go to green when your speed limit below.
Yeah, the new MUTCD has more regulations on those.
Yes, they do.
Can't have anything flashing,
Yeah.
the colors, and, yeah, there's a little more smoothing.
Now, Jim, do you hear a lot about Route 111? I mean, when we hear from folks in Hampstead and Atkinson, it's almost always about Route 111. I don't know if you hear that internally as well.
We hear that as well. Route 111 obviously is a major corridor east-west. And with the amount of truck traffic that's on that road and just the speed of the traffic that's on that road. We have, I think 4 signalized intersections along that road. 5, excuse me. Signalized intersections along that road. We have very little pedestrian traffic crossing that road. We do have some in the area of the library, we do have some in the area of Coldstream. Those obviously are concerns as well.
Yeah, I think we've probably seen it in the last 5 or 10 years, I've probably seen a request for every connection to 111 to be signalized.
I mean, it's tricky.
Yeah.
I got a question for you on the discussion about the flashing lights. I was talking to the police chief and the road agent, because we have one at the southern end of Main Street, which used to be 125 or 30. And people were running that, and so they put up a stop sign with the multiple red lights around it, and it's solar powered type thing.
Yeah.
And I think they thought it was effective. He said there's still people run that, which it's hard to believe, but that was one of the things that they obviously felt was effective, because that's one of the only project we had on the shelf right now was to get another one of those for another intersection that they've had some crashes at. It's an intersection of 3 town roads.
Yeah.
And, so. I was kind of surprised when no flashing, is that
Not
not applied to
on the
that?
speed, on the speed
Speed,
feedback, on
okay.
the stop signs, they're
On the
very
radar.
effective. Yeah, they're effective, especially at night. And
Yeah.
sometimes, if you have a radius, sometimes they'll put them even on the left side of the road. So they
Yeah.
can see them both, because if you come around the corner, sometimes you can't see the stop sign, so they put them on the other, but yeah, those have been effective. And we've installed those in a couple spots, dangerous traffic as well, so.
Okay.
So, yeah, sometimes they've actually oversized them, like, you know, you.
Yeah,
You get the 48 by 48 or something like that, so, yeah, they've been effective. Federal Highway has found those very effective. So that's good, you can do those, the flash around, it's the speed feedback ones that
Okay.
UTC changed, sorry, thanks for clarifying, yeah.
No, it's just good to know.
Yeah, no, they're constantly trying, and I guess. So this is another piece and part of. We talk about the action plan and how the next step is implementation. There's actually 2 other portions or other pieces to the implementation. There's demonstration and not subsidiary, supplemental grants.
Mhm.
So at the next phase, and we don't know when that's gonna come out, the federal highway changed it last year. You can go after implementation, but you can also go after what they're called demonstration and supplemental. And the idea is, if you have an idea you wanna put out, but it's not gonna be permanent, it's a trial. That's part of demonstration. So if you wanna try bump outs with, you know, sometimes I've seen it as much as noodles put out on a road, on a small, like,
Oh.
and try the bump outs, try to lessen. You can do that and they'll pay for that, but it can't be permanent. Because they want you to try these different applications. You can have it as an implementation. And then supplemental is where we're doing the MPOs and there's 14, 16 communities. You really want to dive in and really put stuff, you want to get a deeper dive. 2 of your communities join up. You can actually do a supplemental to what we're doing that dives deeper into your community. So then you can get more projects, like a project list internally, or if you have a certain 111. We want to study 111 a little bit more in depth, that you can go after a little bit more implementation. There's a lot on the federal FHWA website, but there's a minimum, I think it's 5 million is what the minimum for implementation grants are. But the others can be lesser, so you can go after. So if you're interested, then this is one step. And the idea of this action plan isn't like, okay, we checked it off, we're gonna go after, the idea is so you can use this in the next year, in the next 2 years, like, here are some suggestions for your communities. It's kind of like a living document, you can add to it, you can try stuff, it doesn't work. Other communities try things, like, we're providing this, and even the other MPOs, you know, that's what they're trying to do, so. All right, enough of me talking, sorry. Anyone else that?
Town Newton,
Yeah.
108 is obviously the main road, Main Street through Newton. There's one project right now that's in the works for a roundabout on one of the pretty dangerous intersections that they have with Amesbury Road and Main Street. That one's, there's accidents constantly happening there. But more so the next intersection down, which is New Boston Road, which everybody shoots up to go to 125 to head that way. That, it's kind of even bizarre how they even set up that intersection, but it's on a severe if you're heading north on a right hand, almost a hairpin turn with the intersection for New Boston Road taken right off from there. I'm surprised that they haven't even temporarily, like even like a 3-way stop sign. I know they don't want to stop traffic, but I know people, there are accidents because you cannot, if you're heading north and you go to take a left on the Boston Road, you stop and you can probably only see, if you see 100 feet around the corner, that's probably about the most you're gonna get out of it. And even further back, there's the intersection with Merrimack Road where the fire station and police station are on that road. It's an odd, you go down the hill and up the hill on 108, Merrimack Road is here, then there's another road that's offset off of it. And you're climbing the incline of the road, you're climbing the hill, so if you're looking to the north, you can't see the traffic coming at you because of the profile of the road, just little things like that, that just make it, I'm surprised there aren't more serious accidents than there are. I mean, I know, I was listening to him talking about, there's no sidewalks, obviously, there's no nothing like that, but from the Mass line through Plastow on 108, there must have been a project a while ago, it's all widened out, there's 4-foot shoulders and everything else. Bicycles are huge in that area, I see them, especially on Saturdays and Sundays they can't even go through the winter because it doesn't snow that much anymore, but really from April through November. They come up in packs from Massachusetts. You can tell there's guys that are coming out of Mass that I'm assuming they ride, and they must take 108 right up through East Kingston and into heading towards Exeter and all that area. But that's a big issue, I think, with they have no place to go, you know, traffic wise. They just basically are in that lane.
Yeah, and so people that come up either are gonna stay behind them or they're gonna go around and cross the double yellow.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the big thing. It's kind of weird too. It's 40 miles an hour coming out of Plastow. It stays 40 where it narrows down in Newton for a stretch till you get to the center of town, then it goes to 30 miles an hour. But in that 40-mile-an-hour range, there's passing zones. There's things that, to be honest with you, everybody's doing 50 and 55 when it's 40. If it was 30, they're doing 40. To an extent, it's almost like I'm wondering if a lowering speed limit would help and getting rid of passing zones. Especially the way the Wentworth Drive intersection is a passing zone. Kind of right through it. And I think that was the worst one I saw, but a lot, again, the intersections all have. They're not T intersections either. Yeah, they have turning lanes on them with, like, say, it's almost like they didn't want to move the telephone pole out of the way and they built the impact. And that's because there's a telephone pole right in the middle and there's an island, but that tends to mess things up a lot too. And even pedestrians and stuff, coming up here today, there was an older gentleman walking and he's walking probably, I'd say 3 feet out into I was going north, he was walking in the southbound lane, probably 3 feet off the white line. When you have the white line and then there's no pavement beyond it. So he was walking, he must just scoot out of the way when cars are coming. Yeah, you see a lot of that.
Well, that's good. It's not uncommon, the lack of shoulders, really on the road, unless it's a major road, and even then, sometimes you want that 4 feet, and if you got curvy at 5 feet, and sometimes you don't have it, or now you're gonna widen the road for a couple feet.
Right.
Financially, that's always been a sticking point.
I mean, and you can see where that stretch from the Mass border to Newton through Plastow where they did it, you know, where there's room with shoulders. But really from there, you can take it all the way up through East Kingston and that whole area, there's no shoulders and, you know, the roads meandering its way through, so that's the hard part, where the roads aren't wide enough.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you'd say that all the way up to Exeter, really, you know?
Right.
On 108.
And you guys have a different situation than Portsmouth. I'm thinking from winter conditions when they're plowing, because if you even had a flat spot off the pavement that people can walk, and then you start plowing and we get hit with a couple storms. Now, you're up against that snowbank, you're in the road,
Right.
and if a car comes, you're not going. And then somebody like Portsmouth or other cities, you get downtown and you get sidewalks where you're plowing, how do you get off the sidewalks, how do you maintain them, so people can walk still, because they probably are used to it, and that's a different thing, so like winter maintenance was one other one that always pops up, of how to save, safety, and that's aspect, so. No, that's good.
That's the main road too, you look, never mind the other roads.
Oh, yeah. Well, we know, and we know from all streets, if the ones off the main roads, whether what community you are, and you wanna go out, and you wanna walk your child, you wanna walk your dog, you just wanna get out to walk. You know, where are they walking? You know, sometimes they feel best walking down the middle of the road so they can be livable or sight on it, which is not the best, but from their minds, that's safer, as opposed to walking on the side of the road where you're not expecting them, and on these local streets, you know, people are speeding because there's no cars on them, so. So we've heard about this from others, and I'm sure it's similar to what you are all seeing in yours, like, you know, cut through towns or such, you know, speeding is the number one.
It's, yeah, speed's a big factor too, and anytime you get a straightaway there, and. With the police are all over the place too, you know, they, like you said, they can't be everywhere and they're nonstop. He was pulling people over in the center of town when I was coming up here today.
Yeah, and even when they're out, people, I'm finding on the highways, I have a cousin who's a state trooper. Even on the highway, when they're out, they're still going 80 because they're in a pack. So they feel, all right, well, I got a 1 in 5 chance of getting pulled over if he gets me, you know, right? And so who do you pick? And it's unfortunate, but that's where we're at, right?
If you drive 93 days, and do only look 3 exit, one exit one. You're not going 85 miles an hour, you push out that road.
Yeah, no, and yeah, that's it.
And 101 is very similar.
Yeah, just yesterday I came back from Concord. I don't think I did under 80, most of the way from Concord to, well, Epping, I guess, when I got off to on 125, then go back to the Boston. I've never seen it quite that fast.
Yeah, I had a resident suggest to me, why can't we do something like, you know, the campaign against drunk driving, make a campaign against speeding, and it's more of a cultural change than anything else, then.
And it's a behavior, yeah, these cars have become so nice to drive. And that's what we're talking about, safe cars and such that, we were just talking about it, you know, you rent a car and all of a sudden you're driving. I'm going 80, I mean, it doesn't feel like I'm going 80, or a new car, you know. And I have an older one where it starts shaking at the 70, and I'm like, maybe that's not a bad thing for my teenage girls, you know? But no, it's a good point. We, the state safety engineer, he's like, why do cars go, like, why do they can get up to 140? What's the point? Like, why can't there be a limit, you know? But, someone else, I'd be happy to hear anything online.
I see Joe has his hand up.
Thank you. People think of Hampton, they probably think mostly of the beach and we think of the local roadways, and we work with DOT at the beach pretty regularly. But we have that interchange of Route 101 and Route 1, which is like a shooting gallery. It's a high-speed rotary. I'm kind of curious what your statistics show for crashes up in that rotary. People don't know how to handle it. And, you know, I negotiate it multiple times a day, and I can say every time I get in there, there's somebody else. Maybe I'm wrong. It seems like nobody else knows how to move their way through that interchange.
Yeah, besides the slides I have, I mean, I can show those back up and talk about it, but yeah, we can kind of look and see what we have.
Yeah, that there's actually a project in the 10-year plan. I believe engineering is scheduled to start next year. So I guess off the top of my head, 2025, 2026, to start looking at reconfiguring that sort of rotary, sort of whatever you want to call that mess. And modernize it and bring it into more of a probably more of a traditional diamond interchange. Although there was some discussion in the planning work that happened on it, which is now probably 10 years old. About you know, using roundabouts strategically as part of the connection to Route 1 from the 101 ramps. But you know, it'll go through design, so I don't know what it'll look like exactly. But that was the thoughts when we did the study, and again, that was probably 10 years ago now.
Joe, you have a lot of pedestrians near the beach area and downtown there and crossings. Has there been anything that you've installed recently that's worked well, like, have you done raised crosswalks out there?
So, about 3 years ago, we had noticed a dynamic shift of folks, young children walking to one of our elementary schools. And even though it was not a mid-block crosswalk, we did have pedestrians coming up one side of the street and looking to cross High Street. We put a rapid flash pedestrian beacon in, and the problem went away. The kids are using it, and the people on the roadway itself are paying attention to it. So yeah, that was extremely successful.
Great. No, that's great to hear. Those are becoming a lot more prevalent and the state and the federal government, like, they're trying to get it so they're not sporadic in locations. They're trying to get them more of a kind of a corridor style, like, so you get used to it. If it's I'm thinking if you've been to Nashua, downtown Nashua, we have intersections, but they have like 4 different locations mid-block with rapid flashing. So now that I live in Nashua, as I'm driving, I'm ready for those to go off because I know they're there, and it helps with that, as opposed to just having one. And you kind of lose track of it and stuff like that. So no, that's great to hear. What about near the beach area? Anything there that comes to mind? Doesn't have to, but.
Well, if you're looking for success stories, not so much, but I can tell you one thing that is a continuous pressure is we do have a lot of crosswalks across 1A in many locations. And as a matter of visibility and safety promotion, is we put the pedestrian crosswalk A-frame signs on the center line. But given the traffic layout and the frequency for emergency calls, the life expectancy of those pedestrian sandwich signs is about 2 hours before the ambulance runs the road and knocks them right over and destroys them. So that's a real ongoing issue. They're necessary. They work so long as they're there, but they don't last long because of just the nature of the traffic that's on that road.
So there's a need, just trying to find the right mechanism, I guess, right? That kind of helps outline.
That's true, and we do know that 1A is a major job that's in DOT's hands at this point, and I'm not sure to what extent they've actually looked at that level of detail yet. It's still in the public hearing process, from what I recall, and I'm not sure if they've gotten onto that kind of detail yet.
Yeah, I'm not sure either on that.
Yeah.
But this is an opportunity for us, maybe the safety action plan can kind of weigh in on like recommendations for projects that are being implemented as, heavy pedestrian areas. We recommend this type of signage or these types of approaches kind of thing. Because yeah, I mean, almost all of Ocean Boulevard in Hampton is going to be tackled in the next 10 years. As well as Ashworth Avenue. There's a project for Ashworth Avenue. There's the project to replace the Seabrook Hampton Bridge. So there's a lot of work that's going to be going on there. So it would, if we could have some recommendations that we could throw to the design teams for that kind of thing, I think that would be helpful.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. Anyone else?
One issue we have is a couple of intersections with poor sight lines, and I think the DOT had been working on some type of detection system and flashing lights in advance. I didn't know if those are successful or if that's something that can be done.
What's that?
The intersection conflict warning signs is what I think that was.
Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, so radar or something on a camera.
Yeah, so it's funny you mentioned that. So we are working with DOT. We have the highway safety on call with DOT, and before that, we were working on 3 locations in the state that had problems with sight lines for intersections, and they are doing a trial, and they're called intersection conflict warning systems, where Peterborough, Pelham, and Chesterfield. And Peterborough is probably the easiest one because you come around the bend and there's an intersection there and you can't see vehicles coming when you're coming on Route 9. So what the intent is, as vehicles approach the minor roads, they are recognized. There's signs on Route 9, just a couple hundred feet, maybe, 400 feet. They'll flash to say car entering or vehicle entering or approaching. And the idea is, I know somebody's there, so I'm gonna be hesitant and be cautious is the intent. So far, I haven't heard of any crashes at these locations. We're looking at it's a 3-year process. We did a before study. We did one now after a year it's been installed, and now we're gonna do next year, it's the 3rd year. And to see how they're working, if they make a difference. And the other thing is speed. You know, if they're flashing, are people slowing down? Or is there no change, or what's going on for these cars? Because if there's no change, they're not doing what they need to do. So, yeah. And they're trying, some states I've heard have taken them out because they're not as effective as, or the faults, depending on the sign. That's one of the biggest things is it blank? Is it flashing? Like, is it a word sign? And does it give a false negative or a false positive? But if it's not working and nothing pops up and a car's there, then that's not good. So they're trying to figure that out. Anything else from?
This, speed is always a concern in the neighborhoods.
So
Real.
everywhere, right?
Yeah.
It's neighborhood, downtown.
Oh, yeah. And we'll go out and measure the speeds a lot of time, and there really isn't a speeding issue. What we have is a speed limit issue. We have a lot of signs posted at 20, which is not not enforceable really, because the lowest speed limit by law is 25 in New Hampshire. But people want to know, why aren't you enforcing these 20-mile-hours? People aren't going 20 miles an hour. Something has to be done, and it's like, well, a lot of times the speed limits aren't just realistic.
Yeah. How about pedestrian, bicyclists, crosswalk, lighting of crosswalks, like that?
Yeah.
And that's
pretty
tricky.
improved, it's. We have a lot of the flashing beacons, the RRPs, about a dozen of those. People want them all the time, everywhere.
Yeah.
But we monitor them as well, and it's a lot of places we see, people just don't use them. They won't push the button, they'll just wait for a gap in traffic anyways. Yeah, it's not often where they're actually used when we put them in. So you're spending $15,000 on a system that doesn't do any more than $100 sign does, put on the side of the road. And we have a lot of speed feedback signs, probably have at least a dozen of those as well. And we try to move them around, but once you put one in the spot, the neighbors don't like to see it leave.
Yeah.
So we end up just leaving them and adding more to the system as we go.
What was the question I had? So the RFPs. On your major streets where you have, intersections with signals, so you have crossing, do you still find people crossing? Jaywalking, that type of.
In the downtown area, people will cross anywhere.
Right.
It's just, they don't pay attention to traffic, they put the roads are just pedestrian priorities, so.
Yeah, and it's tough because then cars stop when they're not supposed to stop,
Yeah.
and you get a rear end and then pedestrian gets hit or the signals, and then the timing, things are backed up a
Yeah.
little.
But luckily, we haven't had a lot of pedestrian bike crashes in place here, so. And people going up slow enough or be careful enough that it isn't happening.
That's great.
Yeah.
Have you installed any raised crosswalks or anything like that?
We have a few raised intersections that have crosswalks on them.
How's that work?
They worked out well. The fire department now is not in favor of anymore.
Maintenance, what about maintenance?
Yeah, maintenance hasn't been too bad. Snowplow drivers got used to them.
Okay.
And their plows as they go over.
It's always fine. It's similar to like the roundabouts. They were always, until they actually got to use them for a year, and then they kind of get used to it. It's a little tricky, but
Yeah.
no, that's good. So the raised crosswalks, if for those that don't know, it's just instead of coming to your sidewalk, come down, cross up the road actually gets lifted up to match the crossing. So it's like a speed hump in a way, so it provides a speed bump to slow people down, but also that evenness. Some people put them on major roads, some put them on the 2 side roads. So if you come off the major and turn, like in Cambridge, Mass, they'll put them in for those edges there. I don't know honestly what the difference is, but I haven't really studied that, but just different things that it's more of a drainage aspect. If they put them on the side so that the water can keep going and they don't have to, but
Yeah, we are installing our first raised crosswalk now, construction project. It hasn't been formed yet, but it will be very shortly. It's good. We tried a mini roundabout at a four-way stop, getting rid of the four-way stop and putting a mini roundabout. We tried that last year, but we ended up not going back to the four-way stop.
yeah.
It's,
Is that the one with no, is that like the turbo one they call now, where it's no curve in the middle? It's just a paint, or is it?
no, we tried it with some rubber curving, bolted that down the middle and filled it in with asphalt.
Yeah,
So we made a little roundabout. You could drive over it if it was a large truck or emergency vehicles could drive over it. We didn't put any signage in it.
yeah,
And it worked well, but people didn't like it.
yeah.
So,
And that's like a demonstration type thing. If you you get that rubber, they want to come in and try things. No, that's good. Oh, not good that they don't like it, but
No,
We
and
should
we
try
had, yeah, and we tried temporary speed cushions last year on Woodbury Ave. And they worked very well, slowed traffic speeds down from 35 to 25, and they worked too well, although the fire department didn't like them, so. They did not get approved as a permanent item.
yeah.
So we were just hitting the corridor now with the feedback signs. We've got 3 in each direction.
And you're probably running into, when people wanna do their road diets, I'm sure the fire department's like, I need the spade.
Oh, yeah.
Right, so you can only do so much with what they have. It's uncommon.
And the fire department, because we have the international fire code, it gives the fire department veto power over the traffic calming devices. So, when they say no more speed bumps, then that's what it is.
How's the reception been on the bike lane on, what's it, Middle Street, the road? Since I remember there was a bunch of concern about it initially, but it's now been there for a couple of years.
Yeah, now that it's been switched back, the bike lane's out in traffic and the parking's back to the curb, there hasn't been any issues with it.
Okay.
Speeds have increased again. I mean, we calmed speeds down by putting the parking out in the street, away from the curb. And we noticed as soon as we put the parking back to the curb, speed went right back up again.
Okay.
Which road was that?
Middle Street? Middle of Lafayette, Route 1.
Why was it just controversial having it now?
Yeah, because we could have used another foot or 2 of space from curb to curb. People are parking their car out away from the curb and then trying to open the door into traffic, and there was just no room to really open the door. And too much volume going by, so.
Thank you. Anyone else? I don't know.
Yeah, Bob Diana from Greenland. We have an intersection on Route 33, which is really dangerous. It's the intersection with Bayside Road and Winnicott Road. And the reason it's dangerous is because there's so much traffic that's failed. The intersection cannot handle the traffic that wants to go through there during morning and evening rush hours. So you end up with backups a mile long. And the consequence of that is that once the traffic is released, red light, green light, now you can go. So much traffic goes through there that the east side and west side access points have a great deal of difficulty getting out onto the road. They have to wait and wait and wait, and because of that, they take unnecessary chances. And there's gonna be an accident. There may have been already, and I've seen the accident reports from the town of Greenland PD. And there was, I forget how many incidents, and I didn't look into the details. But there's a lot of incidents. So something needs to be done about that, and I'm thinking of outside the box on that, and it may be a stupid idea, or it may be, I don't know what it is, but I'll come back to that.
Okay.
There's another related issue, it's pedestrians crossing the bridge just to the east side of that intersection, pedestrians and bicycles. There's no room. The bridge safety report says this, I might be wrong, it's maybe 3 inches of width for a pedestrian. Yeah, that's not enough for me. The bridge is unlighted. People cross it, you can't tell people whether to wear white clothes or not. They wear black clothes and they get on the bridge in the dark at night and they're crossing. Somebody's gonna get killed. We need sidewalks, we need lights on the bridge. Something has to be done to save lives right there. And then back to the other thing, the high amount of traffic going through that intersection doesn't let people get onto Route 33, either the east side of it or the west side of it during those high traffic hours. My outside the box thinking is, can we create a longer delay between red light and green light so that the cars waiting to go can't go? Leaving at least a small break in the action for the people from the side access points to get in. I don't know if that would work, I don't know if it wouldn't, I don't know if everybody would be complaining about it, but
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm thinking outside the box, because I can't think of anything inside the box.
No, it's interesting about. Not my expertise, probably running up to the Chris things.
Yeah, I know there's standard all red times, I believe it's something like 2 seconds, but it depends on the
That's right.
intersection. But yeah, it doesn't allow a lot of time for right turns on red. That's, yeah, I don't know if DOT would be a fan of increasing all reds, because you're gonna increase queues and delays and.
It's already a mile
So
in.
that- Yeah, that'd be an interesting conversation. Yeah.
But are they interested in saving lives? Yeah.
Mhm.
And then the other thing is the drivers realize that the red time is increasing, is, oh, I have more time to run the red light now, so.
It could happen. Sometimes when you put stripes on a road, people say, oh, I can go faster on this road.
Yeah.
But that is also something that could be done with programming of the lights instead of with some expensive addition to the infrastructure. So that might be something that could be tried to see if it would work. For a good small amount of money.
It's similar like the flashing yellow left turn arrows that I've seen implemented mostly on 125. In this area, but you know, I'm curious as to there have been any safety impacts from that. I haven't heard anything about it, but and it certainly lets traffic go, make those left turns when when things are, gives people the opportunity to go when it's clear, not just waiting for the green, but I haven't heard one way or the other whether that's had an impact on safety at these intersections or not.
I don't know about safety, but it brings up an interesting point. Most of these solutions that are funded are, things designed to, traffic calming or, do something to reduce speed. A lot of the stuff that is causing this is driver education, distracted driving and things like that. You can't, I think, project your way through distracted driving, and its enforcement is tough because the police chief says he can't search a person's phone, they're sitting there at green lights, for example, not going anything. And then, somebody gets mad, cuts them off, goes around or whatever. They can't search a phone. I mean, if there's an accident and the person is talking on the phone, they have a record there. Oh yeah, you were actually talking on the phone when you ran into the guy. And the other thing I've seen, and this applies to what Dave was talking about, is lack of knowledge of what to do when they see a flashing light. And there's this, do I have right of way, or no, flashing yellow means you deal with the oncoming traffic, but you can turn when it's open. But I live off of 125, I come out there, and the number of people who have no clue as to who has the right of way, they think that, oh, somebody turning on to 125 has the right of way over oncoming traffic. No, and so you sit there, wait for the person coming the other way who's trying to, give you the opportunity to make a turn across oncoming traffic. And says, no, I'm not gonna do that, because when you hit me, eventually it's my fault. So driver education is not something that I don't think we can get funded for out of this project, but.
No, but
it certainly.
we can mention it, it's come up in the other MPOs, is
Okay.
education, it's, you know. When the roundabouts first came in,
Yeah,
people were used to rotaries in Massachusetts, and the difference is who had the right of way. And so at roundabouts, people would stop and wait for everybody to go, but. Which was fine, but then you'd have others that would not know and just, they had the right of way to get on. And the people in the circle had to stop, and so there was a little education there, but, my daughter got in an accident in Nashua. Because there was a green arrow. But she didn't realize the cars could keep going. So she had a green arrow, it was, and she got hit T-bone because she thought she had the right way and stuff.
yeah,
And
the green arrow usually
and-
means that-
and it's funny because like we got it and I go. I don't know if I would have known that as well, like the situation, I'm like, and I do with this all the time. Like, yeah, it's not well informed, and I don't know, I have a 23 and a 21-year-old, and I've asked them during their driver education. What do they go through? And it's not, they don't go through the details they used to. And it's more getting out on the road and driving and that type, and I don't even think they go through half these as like a roundabout or other locations. So I think education, we can add in, there's some other things that we can note and say, you know, education on certain things, and yeah, I think that's a good one.
And drivers from Europe, I mean, England is nothing but roundabouts, and, you know, Europe certainly, they have now slightly different rules of the road, you have the vehicles on the right.
Yeah.
In Europe and, somebody in the US, but, be that as it may. You're right, roundabouts on Route 1, for example, they even, in Massachusetts, they even have a roundabout with a straight through road, you know, right?
Yeah.
Which I couldn't believe when they changed that, and it's like. what is this?
Yeah, no, it's, and I think.
And stop signs.
Yeah, we can do that. No, that's, we'll put in, we'll talk about the education aspects, how to get, you know, and stuff like that.
Yeah, cause I think that's.
Yeah.
Little pet peeve,
No.
we don't talk about people from Massachusetts not using turn signals, well, that's swept over the border now,
And I hate to say it, but we'll probably, you know, education about seatbelts and helmets, like,
Yeah,
and they're out of our control, but just the knowledge. And I don't know how we'll put this in, if we can, we gotta see how we do it, but, you know, just the knowledge that by wearing a seatbelt, by wearing a helmet, you know, the chances of a severe or fatality decrease. But it's, you know, the law is the law, right? You don't have to.
yeah,
And that's, we're not dictating, but I don't know how we'll put that in and try to figure that out.
And then what do we, on education too, there's a new thing that the city, I think City of Boston just did one now, it's called traffic garden. It's where they get the kids, it's like on a playground set up. And they have little streets and stop signs and crosswalks, and it's how to teach kids how to, the rules of the road, whether they're biking or walking or driving.
I actually like that. I saw that. That was really,
Yeah.
that was nice.
We did something similar in Portsmouth before the Bears ride. We had just kind of in the, I think it was the senior center, community center parking lot. We just had different transportation safety sort of like lanes set up, and we taught kids how to merge. More so Safer did that. I was just kind of helping oversee everything, but that was very effective. And then just as we're talking about this, it made me remember in high school, one thing that they did with us, and in middle school too, they repeated it twice, so we had to go through it. We had to go to a special display where they had a car that had been crashed by, it was horrible, it killed 4 high school students into a tree. The driver who hit them, I think, was drunk and high. I think it was like alcohol marijuana situation. And we had to look at the car wreck, and we had to look at like shoes of victims and look at how many empty shoes there were and say. And it really just, I think that was a very influential piece of experiential education I had to go through, and I think maybe something like that would help a lot. And it's the repetitive hitting it in middle and high school.
Was that a real crash?
Yes, yeah, it was a real crash in my town. 4 teenagers passed away from it, 2 different high schools, so it really brought together the community, and it was a big discussion about transportation safety and what was going on in our capital district. This was in New York. So I'm not sure what New Hampshire does at the state level, but we had to look into a coffin, and we had to, yeah, it was a lot, and look at pictures of crashes, it was very visceral.
We did this sort of mock one, so it was like, they had us go to this big crash.
watch the actor at the crash, but the acting was terrible, so I just remember being distracted by bad acting.
They brought in the kids' cameras too, which I think good. You get the actual victim, there were tears, there was not a dry eye in the house, but I think after that, it really solidified for my class that drunk driving is not, and distracted driving is not cool. We got it.
I built cars for 20 years, more than 20 years. So I ran into this thing a lot called the Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standards. It's probably aware of them, maybe not all of us are aware of them. But they regulate how car makers can build cars and what has to be included and what cannot be included. And they got a lot of diverse regulations about a lot of different things. But it seems to me like there ought to be something that could be put into those regulations, if you're really, really patient. To limit access to cell phones in certain ways while the car is moving. I think it should be built right into the cars, and I think that might just discourage the distracted driving.
I've seen things recently speaking about cars themselves. Cars that know what the speed limit is, where you are, and automatically like limit your speeds. And I'm curious about what people think about that kind of thing, or say, automated traffic enforcement, red light running cameras, cameras that automatically, tag you if you're going 45 and a 30, that kind of thing. New Hampshire is very much a live free or die place, but, is there room for that kind of, sort of oversight in our communities, when we're trying to keep people alive? Is it better to have a camera on, Front Street here where you've got a ton of pedestrians, a ton of bikes, and people going 40 in a 25, should we set up cameras there that force people to do that, or have cars that force people to stay closer to 25?
Yeah, I'm very in favor of cars governing to the speed limit. I don't know why you should be able to break that law. Like, it should just not be physically possible for your car to do. That wouldn't be too hard technologically.
We all,
Oh, sorry, continue.
we all know that intersections are dangerous. And I'm not one for Big Brother watching me, but I also think with the law enforcement issues we have now, we live in the policy in the road. We really need to think outside of the box. And we should be with cameras, with delays, or whatever, or speed. So if you both were running away at 40 miles an hour, that was an accident going through that. You went through that running at 40 miles an hour on purpose, you should be ticketed for that. If you're just trying to slow down and you just can't make it through the red light, the delay should be able to have some kind of judgment of saying, okay, this person tried to slow down, but they were gonna get a hazard if they did. Versus the people just blowing through the red light at 40 miles an hour. We don't have enough officers on the road to enforce the law. And if we can use cameras to collect revenue, why can't we use cameras to enforce the law?
Yeah, I know. It's not. With the state law, they can't do it, they can't put them on, but you've seen how the states do it, and so. I think that's the trick, it's just, it's a big campaign, it's gonna be years of fighting, but. I don't see why, like, if you get a good group, that's what they wanna battle, If safety is becoming this big of an issue, that. It may pick up speed more quickly than in the past, and then, especially if you get more bicyclists, more walkers, this is where we're going, we can see where that goes, but, yeah, that's always been an interesting, comment.
And from a personal experience, if you're driving down 95 in Maryland and you go through a construction zone that says 55, speed monitored by camera, even if they're not working, you will get a ticket.
Yeah.
So, that states they will do it.
It will give you a second, like, okay, well, I got a ticket. I'm probably not gonna do that again, or it may do a second, I don't know, it's gonna add up, and especially those.
Anyone else online?
Yeah, in East Kingston.
Oh, perfect.
So we have, a couple of, I don't know if this is on topic, but it's certainly worth mentioning. We have a couple of railroad crossings in town, one's, of course, Route 107. And that's a pretty high traffic, road, especially in evening rush hour.
Mhm.
And the crossing gates on those crossings are kind of erratic. They don't always go up when they come down, that's the more frequent situation. But there's another road called Sanborn Road, where I was riding my bike one day, same thing, those gates were down with no train. And same as happens on 107. So I called 911 to let them know, because people who were going between the gates. And while I was standing there, one of the people on I think he lived on that road, said, oh, this isn't unusual for this to happen. And he said, sometimes it's the opposite. They don't go down and the train goes by, which is.
No, I think that's right on top.
So the 107, if that were to happen during evening rush hour, where those gates went down. The police and the fire department are great. The fire department's about 100 yards away. So they're right there and they stop traffic, obviously. But if that were to happen during rush hour. It would be a mess. I don't know where the traffic would, well, I know where to get diverted to, but it would be a mess. It would take a while for that to work itself out.
Yeah.
And when those gates go down, they're down for an extended period of time. The one on Sanborn Road that I ran into, I was there for probably 20 minutes. And the police officer was busy doing something else, so it wasn't even a police officer.
Do other people have any issues with railroad? I mean, it's not uncommon in communities. You know, are they in good condition? Are they're reliable?
I got a feeling, I've seen it happen now between the two intersections personally 3 times in the past year. So to me, that's enough that it's definitely a red flag waving.
And trains are not frequent where, you know, you don't have them constantly going through, like it's what, one a day? One a week?
I'd say probably between 4 and 6 a day.
Okay.
There's a couple of commuters for sure,
Yeah,
and
there's,
those guys are really moving. But there's probably another 3 or 4 freight trains.
yeah, there's, I think six down Eastern trips a day.
Yeah, 5 in each direction.
5 in each direction.
10.
Yeah, and then, the freight trains probably 4, 6 a day. Yeah, it's,
Something like that.
I live fairly close to the tracks here in town, so they kind of disappear now. Like, I don't hear them anymore, but,
Yeah.
but yeah, and then, yeah, I mean, the Front Street crossing of the railroad tracks has similar issues where it'll go down and it'll stay down and there's no train.
Yeah.
But I've seen a lot more maintenance in the last year or 2 on it, with CSX. Is it CSX now that,
Yeah, there was actually guys out there yesterday, but I don't know that they're doing anything. So.
Hard to tell sometimes.
The railroad company, supposed to, the owner of the tracks, I should say.
Yeah.
Was supposed to maintain them.
Yeah, they're not the easiest to get out there.
Newmarket and Dover, it's another big issue, because I live in Newmarket, and with the railroad crossing there, you're between. It's like heading towards the right end, kind of on Exeter Road 108, but the railroad crossing happens, and if you are on the left-hand side of the road where the sidewalk is headed maybe from like downtown Newmarket down South Main, Exeter. There's just no sidewalk where the railroad crossing is, so you get there, and then all of a sudden you're in the road with the cars, and there's a big gap where you have to cross as a pedestrian or on your bike. Across the railroad, no sidewalk, which makes sense, because the railroad's right there. But it's pretty dangerous, and I see a lot of pedestrians in there just fully in the lane with cars. It goes sidewalk, immediate drop off, and you're driving up there. And then in Dover, I'm not sure what the status is now. I know last year when I was commuting a lot on the Downeaster, someone had driven through the fence at the Amtrak Downeaster stop. Someone crashed through the gate, like the crossing, the railroad crossing. There were just a ton of issues with, signals in Dover as well.
So I heard somebody say that they think the railroad is responsible for putting the gated intersections in, and I don't think that's true. We have either 9 or 13 ungated intersections in Greenland. And since CSX bought the railroad line from Newmarket out to Portsmouth about a year ago, they've been spending a lot to upgrade the rail system itself. They're putting in new rails. But the towns are responsible for putting in the gated intersection, and they cost $1 million a piece. And England doesn't have the money. Those are also on back roads that are very lightly used. But I had a friend of mine hit by a train on one of those back roads. So they're worth something. So I don't know, look into it. I don't think the railroad, I don't think CSX is gonna put up those gates.
I know DOT has a set aside for addressing railroad crossings. But I honestly, I couldn't tell you if that's for dealing with like the paving at railroad crossings, or if it's putting the signs and barriers in, that kind of thing, so.
The other part of that is that rail traffic has increased in the past year since CSX bought that line. It's up, I would say, threefold. We used to have one, maybe 1 or 2 a day. Now we're up to maybe 5 or 6 a day.
On the Portsmouth
spur
branch,
line that
yeah.
goes out to Portsmouth from Newfields.
Yeah, it's the Newfields New Market line there.
Yeah, 5 or 6 a day, yeah.
Okay.
We're close to 130, so, just want to note that we're at 126.
Okay.
Is there any, anybody else?
I'll just quickly say from from the transit perspective, we shared a lot of thoughts at the SRPC meeting, so I don't need to repeat them all here because you already have those notes, but we did put in quite a few thoughts on this that are generally applicable to both regions.
I think the big thing for hosts or within your communities, if you have transit, is you may have transit stop. I guess the other part of that is, can people get to these transit stops? Safely, like, there's transit stops, which is great, but do you have the access, the crosswalks, the connectivity to get them there? And that's another thing that a lot of communities, it's great that they have it, but the people that need it, for some reason, there's that missing link, and that's where the safety becomes, so we've noted that in a couple spots.
Yeah, Portsmouth is pretty good in terms of sidewalk coverage. I'm sure there are gaps, but much of it is covered where we go. Newington, there are not, but we are also a pretty small amount of geographic area in Newington, but there's some places, Shattuck Road coming to mind, where there's not good sidewalk coverage.
The one that's on Gosling as well.
That is a significant crossing concern, and I believe that was already mentioned at some point. It comes up in every planner.
Yeah.
And it's not brought up.
Yeah. And when we have the discussion that we're going to have in a couple weeks with folks in Portsmouth, we're meeting with some of the social services agencies and others to try to get some of the input from some of the folks that we don't usually hear from, and Coast will be in on that as well as the city. And I expect that we'll hear about, crossing points and especially that coast stop on Gosling there.
And I guess the other one is, as land, it's expensive in Portsmouth in particular. A lot of services are getting moved out to Heritage Avenue. We're getting increasing pressure to service Heritage Avenue, which is very difficult for our route to do with the way it's all designed. And there's not good sidewalks on Heritage Avenue, so you can see increasing pedestrian traffic down that road. Accessing right now is the post office, but I believe Gather is looking to move the food pantry down there, and then there's another social service that's also moving down there, or potentially moving down.
That's good.
Anyone else? Yes.
Yeah, in Platteville, 121A, is a real concern. It's also on Main Street. We have a village center district, which, And like everywhere else, you ask people, what are the problems? Too much traffic going through that. We've done umpty studies, and they all say too much traffic going too fast. And so, I mean, Dave, RPC did a traffic calming study in what, 2011?
2011.
Where I think we did safe routes to school in 2015, 16. There's another project to do something in the village center district. Sort of caught in the design phase. I don't know where the heck we are exactly in that. And then there's a North Ave intersection, which hopefully will get on the 10-year plan, this go around. That's pretty dangerous, kind of dogleg kind of intersection. Traffic comes from Hayrule, wants to kind of shoot through that intersection out to 125 to get the market basket. 5 o'clock. I would say it's not unusual to see 35, 40 cars in queue. And that, not that, not so much on Main Street because, you know, that's kind of it's through road. But, so that's pretty bad. But, yeah, I mean, we're working on it again.
Yeah.
But north of 125, 121, and the same would be true from Plastow, at least to Hampstead, the 111 intersection, and probably all the way to Chester. Very narrow road, and poor shoulders, so it would be nice to see some type of plan to make that improvement. And I think the other thing we need to do, since you know, nobody has any money, but don't wait to have a $10 million project and do it all at once. Even if you can do $500,000 a year, at least people see there's some progress. I think we need to work more on that, you know, because money is just not, the state doesn't have money, Placer doesn't have money, and nobody has a lot of extra money to spend on these things. But if we did it small chunk at a time, it'd be more affordable.
No, it's the phasing of projects is important. Like you can't build sidewalks everywhere, but if you start in one area, you know, in that connectivity and situation where you said there's a critical intersection, you know, by doing that, does it alleviate some of the safety issues and for the future, yeah. No, it's a good point. Yeah, money's not available everywhere. As you're fighting. That's good. Thank you.
Anybody want to get some last thoughts in? You can all certainly reach out to me or Michaela, and we can make sure that information gets forwarded to Frank and his team for this. As Frank said, we're hoping to get the drafts done on this this fall, early fall, so that we can be ready to adopt them early in the new year here at the MPO. And therefore, that would make sure that our communities are in the best position to apply for grant rounds, you know, beginning in February, March of next year. So if your community is looking at an implementation grant or a demonstration grant or something like that, we would be in good shape in the early spring to be able to do that.
How about a camera on our bridge, much like the one that catches people speeding, that says, oh, there's a pedestrian or a bicyclist on the bridge. Changes the speed limit automatically and notifies all the drivers by a sign.
Do a RRFB for linear movement
Yeah,
along the road as
have it.
opposed to crossings. I mean, you know, that bridge is potentially in the queue to get replaced. And at that point, there would certainly be design would incorporate space for shoulders and a sidewalk and sidewalks there. Of course, there's no landing.
So you've got enough money.
Right, exactly, yeah.
I mean, if we have to wait 10 years. Who's to say how many people are gonna get
Right,
killed on that bridge in the next 10 years?
Is this the same bridge that potentially DES might be interested in, because I wonder maybe
Yes.
about coupling benefits to say.
It is the
with all
same.
the Partnerships.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so,
with a whole host of benefit issues.
I can look into that. One thing that I think would be pushback is like on the interstate where you'll have a drop speed limit for a good long time. If the speed limit varies infrequently or frequently, that, I don't know if that would be a good thing, but I can think about that more. Never heard that. I like it. Like that.
I think it schools in.
Yes.
We gotta build a school.
There you go. But only walk across at 7 AM or 2 PM. Yeah, thank you again for letting us come in and providing your feedback. It's helpful. We have plenty of notes to go by. Our job now is to incorporate all the public outreach and how to get these strategies and everything incorporated. So we'll have more coming in a couple weeks. One thing that to just add to this plan that I didn't mention. The big portion of this was equity. So when we're talking about, like in Nashville, we did the environmental justice, the underserved, and we're gonna meet with social, like the groups there. There's a big component of that and tracks in the MPOs that in the cities that have underrepresented. However, the federal highway classifies them, but those tracks, they really want to look out and make sure that everybody, so people that don't have cars, how are they getting around? They're gonna be walking and stuff, you know, relying on bicycles, don't have the means to, you know, have a car. They really want the equity of this plan, so that's a big portion of this. So just to let you know.
all right, well, thank you, Frank. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it. And all your input, everybody, I appreciate that. So, we do have a couple more items on the agenda that we're gonna go through, but we still plan to finish up fairly quickly here. So next on the agenda is Michaela is going to talk to us about some promising practices for transportation agencies to address road safety among people experiencing homelessness. Did you have a presentation for that?
Do possible.
Oh, yeah.
Sure, it should be in the tech later to this.
Okay.
It's called the FHWA report tech, yeah.
There.
Yeah.
And then let's back to Zoom. And
If anybody needs a minute to stand up and get water too, I know we're like right near the end, so I can also just. This would be a quick one too. Great. Can everybody hear me online? Sounds good. All right. Well, thank you. So this month, Federal Highway released a new report on addressing road safety for people experiencing homelessness. And I just wanted to highlight that this exists basically, and that it's a document that you can go look at and read the statistics for yourself and also the promising practices. So this is, I believe this is I-35 in Texas, but this is the Esperanza project, which is a solution that has been put under the public right of way to address our transportation safety issues happening when people are displaced to the right of way. So some of the findings from the point in time count that was just collected for this report, they're collected for the continuum of care, but they're used in the report. So I think these are just kind of speaking for themselves, but 1 in every 500 people experiencing homelessness on a given night. Point in time counts are usually done in late January on a Wednesday night, and they miss about 50% of people because usually those people are couch surfing, they might be staying with family. So this is just one night of counting. 4 out of 10 of those people are unsheltered in cars, bus stops, or the right of way, so 40%. And 31% of people experiencing homelessness have 1 or more disabilities, but that's likely an underestimation just because of the definition of disability changing between organizations handling the data, as well as just the general underreporting. And why does this connect to transportation safety? So in some of the study cities included in the report, 70% of pedestrian deaths in Portland, Oregon, were people experiencing homelessness. Because those right-of-way crashes are happening on highways, low visibility, low light, than people in places that are not designed for cars. Unhoused people are also 40.2 times more likely to die in a traffic crash in LA than a housed pedestrian or cyclist. So just by virtue of being unhoused, 40.2 times more likely. And then I-35 was kind of a recurring study area in Texas, just because it's constantly undergoing expansion, and there's a large population of people experiencing homelessness there. So 80% of pedestrian deaths on I-35.
Sounds like Logan Airport.
Right?
Yeah.
So for our point in time count, this is from the New Hampshire Coalition to End Homelessness. So this was 2022. I haven't seen a 2024 report from them yet, but they're still collecting data. So our point in time count, you can see, is pretty low compared to the HMIS data, which is the homelessness management information systems. And that's more of a rolling count throughout the year to see who is utilizing the services that are designed for people experiencing homelessness. So who is tapping into our food pantries or requesting housing or transportation assistance. So you can see this number is 6,000 compared to 1,600 for 2022 statewide. And there, it kind of breaks down also the chronic, so people experiencing homelessness over a long period of time, their family, if they're unsheltered in the right way. So 1,400 roughly here, or what's this? Is this on the ones?
Three.
That's my vision test for the day. I failed. But we do have just kind of preliminary numbers as far as updating these. So for our 2023 point in time counts, it doubled. It almost doubled, 52.8 increase from 2022 over that period, which was a 2-year period. So pretty high. So why in the right of way? Shelter from the elements. So if it's raining or if we're dealing with a lot of extreme weather. And social distancing was definitely not always possible during the COVID-19 onset, and a lot of shelters experienced sort of an upsurge in capacity because of mass unemployment, because of people losing housing due to COVID, disabilities, things like that, and the lack of transportation access also sometimes lands people in the right of way, and lack of connection to shelter resources. So when people are displaced, they might not be given any sort of contacts to reach a shelter. They might not have a phone or internet to be reaching out for help. So that's how people. Just some of the ways it can be different for everyone. And that was Canal Street in Manchester on that last slide. How do I go back?
Oh,
There we
yeah.
go. I got that.
Yeah.
So the traditional approach covered in the federal highway report from some different DOTs are forcible displacements or sweeps. So whenever construction is being done in the public right of way, if people are camping there out of necessity, obviously that's a problem for getting construction done. But the traditional approach has been to treat people like more of a barrier or a hazard than to consider them people who need to be connected to resources for long-term housing to give a sustainable solution to the issue. So this is also Manchester as well. This is one of the sweeps. I remember this happening when I was in college and I was there and there were strollers and it was so cold and my feet were so cold that I couldn't feel them. And I just remember thinking like, it does not get worse than this. So I would like to just share the promising practice as well that kind of turn that into a more positive approach instead of pushing people out, how to pull them towards resources for care to address the issue and recognize that they are vulnerable road users and they have to be integrated sort of into the safe systems approach, just like all of our other underrepresented groups. So the number one thing is engaging people experiencing homelessness in planning and decision making. And I don't think all of the solutions provided in the report would be great for our region just because we have obviously lower counts than the national. And you might find that different solutions work different, better based on context. But looking for opportunities to reach out to organizations like we are with Gather and with Haven to talk to people who are experiencing homelessness, to include them in the process about transportation safety, asking what they need. So I think SS4 is a great way that we're doing that by talking with Gather in a few weeks and Crossroads. Collecting and analyzing that data to guide decisions. So this is a great document that I was referencing a lot as I was kind of supplementing, going back and forth through the report. But the state of homelessness in New Hampshire is released annually from the New Hampshire Coalition to End Homelessness. There's some great data and social context in there about, the state of homelessness in New Hampshire. And one thing that has worked really well in Texas has been leveraging DOT resources to support affordable housing and services. So they build sort of small constructed tiny homes along the right of way to immediately put people into shelter, take them away from the elements from speeding cars to give them lighting, and then trained social workers go to the housing community and the Esperanza Project and give people the resources that they need if they're looking for healthcare, if they need maybe just one bus ticket to go reunite with family. And that's been really effective, giving people just one bus or train ticket to get them to a place where they can have housing has been huge. And I put a little bit in the memo about the statistics on how effective that's been. And then some other promising practices are just leading coordination to kind of work with the partnerships that we have in New Hampshire. We have a lot of awesome organizations that are doing a lot for people on the policy side, on the material aid side. So we have the New Hampshire Coalition to End Homelessness, like I said, and then of course, the Housing Authority, and we have the State Council on Housing Stability that provides a lot of great data to our governor. And then also promising practice, I think this very much ties into SS4A, but just planning with people in mind and saying that if people are traveling on sidewalks, they're gonna need lighting, they're gonna need it to be accessible if they're in a wheelchair, if they're pushing a cart, if they have a stroller. There's a number of reasons why people have wheels and are traveling, and so we should try to make it easy for them. And also making sure that transit can connect to places that people need to go, like we talked about the post office. And that was some feedback we got in a survey that it's hard to reach the post office without a car in Portsmouth.
Dover.
Yeah, and Dover as well. So, yeah, making sure destinations make sense for people to get to essential services, social support, DHHS, where they need to go. And then also engaging in dignified interactions and recognizing that everyone's a person and this could happen to anyone at any time. And so we have, again, some great organizations I wanted to highlight here that maybe don't have as much recognition as a state council might, but we have the Mutual Aid Relief Fund and we have New Hampshire Harm Reduction Coalition, which are two organizations working to provide people with just basic necessities, you know, toothpaste, so things that they might need just to maintain health and hygiene when they're in a tough time. And then, of course, our community action partnerships of New Hampshire, which supply a range of services from volunteers like transportation, healthcare, connecting people to housing, rental assistance. And the rental assistance has been huge. I think that was one of the key strategies also highlighted in the New Hampshire report on homelessness as what was really effective for helping keeping people in their housing. Yeah. So I guess that was the end of the presentation. It went pretty fast, but I guess if there's any thoughts on if you've seen this in New Hampshire public right of way, what you think maybe from promising practices could be interesting, general thoughts, questions. Cool. Can also be something people think about in your daily lives or whatever. But
We interact with a lot of folks in this situation with the coast. And so there's various things that we could bring up, but one thing that we've been seeing some lately is people who become homeless and have pets. And trying to figure out what to do with that pet. You know, they bring it on the bus because where else are you gonna leave it? But we have some challenges there, so that's one thing that doesn't get, I don't tend to hear in talks about services.
yeah, that was highlighted in this report as well, that people with pets experience a larger rate of homelessness compared to their non-pet owning counterparts, just because it's hard to find housing that allows dogs and cats and so many people in rental situations, less home ownership in general, less say in what you get to do.
Are pets prohibited on the bus?
We allow pets that can fit into a smaller carrier. With some guidelines on behavior. And that's pets, you know, service animals and sandwich.
That makes sense, there'd be a conflict, you're gonna get someone on the bus with a, you know, severe allergy, there's all sorts of things.
Yeah, and a cat that's kept in a carrier for a long time, that carrier can smell very bad.
Most definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Looks, will you just stop the share or throw me the mouse and I can do that?
Do we have any comments online? Sorry, I couldn't see any.
It's in the chat.
Yeah, can we jump to the meeting?
Thank you, Lee. Appreciate it.
All right.
All right.
Shouldn't need this for the rest. Okay, thank you, Michaela, appreciate that. All right, next on the agenda is just a very, very short update on the project selection progress. So I did put a memo in there that kind of gives you the details on that. I did have to take a couple projects out of the mix, basically due to funding limitations. And I focused that on projects that already had sort of a landing spot. You know, the Portsmouth traffic circle improvements, you know, that's already in the 10-year plan. So, you know, I think we can hold off on getting an update on the cost estimate for that. The Raymond Blueberry Hill project, that is also, that's in the road safety audit, the queue for a road safety audit, so that would be the best approach is to let that go there. And then those low spots on Route 1B in Newcastle and Rye that we talked about, that I thought had initially been included in the Causeway project because they were in the Causeway feasibility report. They weren't included in the Causeway construction project proposal, but they are going to be included in, there are two bike and pedestrian projects already in the 10-year plan. One of them, which is set to go is in design, maybe to go to bid next year, early next year. They're going to be addressed as part of those bike and pedestrian projects, is my understanding. That being said, Hoyle Tanner, who is helping us with the cost estimates, is also doing the design work on those Rye Newcastle projects, so they are aware of it all. And the project manager from DOT is aware of it and the need there. So hopefully those will all get addressed through that. So we're still getting 4 projects where we're getting updated costs, the Maplewood Avenue culvert in Portsmouth, the 2 Stratham projects, the Gateway bike ped improvements and the Stratham Circle, and the 125 and South Road roundabout, which actually again, HTA was involved in doing that road safety audit, so they did the estimate for it. And all I'm asking for them on this is just sort of updated cost numbers with current inflation and unit cost, that kind of thing. And all 4 of those projects, it's the same thing. We're just getting updated unit costs and inflation. And then we have projects then that are going to be have new cost estimates done. We have the Plastow Main Street and North Avenue intersection, the intersection of Bayside, Winnicott, and Route 33 in Greenland, which there was work done on that back in 2018. So this is really more of an update, but since it's new to HTA, we're sort of considering it a more of an involved project. The Five Corners intersection in Epping, which is Route 27, Blake Road, Friend Street, and Depot Street there in West Epping. Route 101 I-95 interchange is a new one this year that we added in, and we had a conversation with District 6 earlier this week. I guess I was trying to remember if it was early this week or late last week, talking about options for that. So we're moving forward with that and looking at that eastbound off ramp from 101. Seabrook, this 1A bike pedestrian improvements. We've actually kind of expanded this project a little bit to be more of a traffic calming project as opposed to just purely bike pedestrians. Currently, that section of Route 1A is 4 lanes, 2 lanes in each direction with no center turn lane. And it's got single lane approaches on either end of it. The bridge is going to be single lane when you go over into Hampton, and Route 286 is a single lane. So we're thinking that there's no real need for this wider 2-lane each direction section, because all it does is promote people driving really fast. So we're thinking that we can co-op some of that space and turn that into 2 lanes with a center turn lane, bike shoulders, and sidewalks. So it's a little bit of a bigger project, and it will probably exceed what we can afford as part of our share of the 10-year plan, but we felt like it was a much better project. And then finally, the Route 1A evacuation ITS improvements, that was the last project that was sort of thrown into the mix. We're scoping that as a study right now, just because we aren't really sure what's needed. And so the idea would be to just kind of figure out what a study might cost that we can put forward. So a little bit of change to things, but still overall moving forward. Goal is still to have those at the next TAC meeting, where we'll need to make some decisions about which project or projects we want to put forward to DOT as our draft recommendations. So, and that'll happen at the October, what's it, 26, 27 meeting, I'm not sure. 24th, actually, a little earlier. So any questions or thoughts on that from folks?
Yeah, can you outline the process after the TAC votes at that point?
Yeah, so the TAC will make the recommendations at the October meeting on the 24th. The MPO policy committee will meet at the commission meeting on, I believe that's November 10th. And we will make final decisions there about, and again, these are just the projects that we're putting forward to DOT as sort of our best options. It's not a final decision on it, on anything at that point. But then, so once the commission makes a decision about which projects to put forward to DOT for scope and cost review, we'll send those projects up. And DOT will review them in November, December, and January, probably get information back for the February TAC meeting, where we'll need to make sort of final call, what is our recommendation or recommendations for the next round of the 10-year plan, which we then have to submit to DOT by the end of March, I think, by law. So, you know, a little bit of work next month, then a break, a little bit of work early in the spring, late winter. So
MPO again votes after.
Yeah, in March, at the March meeting, the MPO will vote on any sort of what our final recommendation is for this round. And it may be one project, it may be two projects. We'll probably send 4 to 5 projects to DOT for review. We are allowed to send as many projects as will fit in our share. So that 8.1 million regional share that we get to play with, plus 2 additional projects. Last round, I think that was 4 projects, maybe 5. This round, I would expect it's probably going to be fewer just because of inflation. So
These Hampton projects, like when you're near 101 and 95 and you get the turnpike, is there toll money that gets?
that is a great question. I'm not sure where the turnpike ends and the non-turnpike begins there. That is a project that would probably be bigger than what we would want to try to tackle with our regional share. But we also felt like from District 6 perspective, that's their top priority for our region. That and the Portsmouth Circle are kind of their 2 big areas of concern in our region. But if we can sort of raise that issue to DOT as, hey, there's some concerns here. Is there turnpike funds that could fund this, or is this, this something that could be dealt with using the National Highway System funds or something like that? That isn't necessarily, it's not one that we probably would want to tackle using our regional share, but we want to raise the issue because it's a big concern. And it's really just the scope of that project is essentially probably making that eastbound ramp 2 lanes fully. And maybe an auxiliary lane of 1,500 to 1,800 feet. So it's not a huge project, but it's probably going to be relatively expensive anyway.
Road reinforcement gets dragged into the turnpike money because it's so close to those ramps and stuff.
Yep. Well, and that's, part of the bypass is the turnpike now. The Sarah Long Bridge is part of the turnpike system. So yeah, that could also be part of that. So, the things have gotten a little fuzzy in terms of where the turnpike actually ends these days. So, but yeah, my goal in addition to sort of establishing what our regional priorities are as part of this is also to raise issues to DOT. Because, this is the one sort of opportunity that we have each year to kind of get those on the big stage, especially in front of the executive council, and the governor, so we can raise these issues as, hey, this is a problem, it's not something we can tackle necessarily here, but the state should be aware of it. That's the kind of thing I like to do. So, all right, any other thoughts on that? All right.
Not on that, but on your long range transportation plan, the last page, and out here. First to the Prescott Kingston, project. Being the advertising for construction in federal
Yes.
fiscal year says on shelf, advertising subject to availability of funding. And step revision to bring into the current fiscal year.
Yep. So like an explanation of what that means? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's on the project updates memo that I put in everybody's packet. Those of you that are online probably don't have that. But I just listed the projects in the region that are going to advertise for construction in the near future. I think I did all of fiscal year 25. Plastow Kingston 10044E is the last one listed. On shelf means the project is ready to go. Like the engineering work is done. They're waiting for funding. It's probably programmed for funding in fiscal year 26 or 27. But if there was some additional funds received, like what's it called? Redistribution happens at the end of the federal fiscal year. Federal Highway Administration looks at what other states haven't spent for money. And that money gets redistributed to states that have spent all their federal funds. So often New Hampshire might get 10 or 15 or $20 million of extra funding coming in. And if that funding comes available, they might advance that project faster than they would normally, I guess is basically what they're saying is part of that. So does that make sense?
Okay, got it,
Yep.
yeah.
Otherwise, I think it's programmed for fiscal year 26 or 27 in the tip. So it's the money is there for the project. They would just, if they can get some additional funding, they'll move it faster. It's basically how it breaks down. So. Great. Any other thoughts?
Once the project is advertised, how shortly after typically does it start construction?
I don't have an answer to that. Sometimes it's very quickly. I think it really depends on the scope and scale of the project. The bigger the project, the longer of a ramp up time there is. I mean, right, you might, I don't know, maybe you had a better idea between advertising and construction starts.
Yeah, so if a project gets advertised, it usually takes, usually 3 weeks when we go through the bidding process, find the bidder, make sure that everything is copacetic, there's no errors and omissions. It's probably a 3-month process minimum, because they gotta get all the contract done. And then get everything set, and then you have, right around that time, you have the pre-construction meeting. And then get ready, so, yeah, I'd say 3 or 4 months, depends on the size of the project, some may require more. If you're talking like at 93, it might be a little bit longer if there's some other gift subs that you have to get the documentation. So if you have a prime contractor and you have a couple subs under them, they have to get all their paperwork settled and everything, so.
Then getting on to governor council,
That's another thing,
getting approved.
yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Do they do quotes for the cost of construction before or after right-of-way settlements?
So when typically when we do the final bid documents, we give an estimate. And that will be the estimate that DOT will take and look at and see if they need to make adjustments on what they see. And they'll have that in their back pocket when it goes up with it. So, and then right away, that changes things sometimes. I mean, they have an understanding of what the right of way will cost. Usually have that programmed in as a cost. And know upfront, because you have to go through that process. As you're going through the design, you can't have any surprises, so they have an understanding of what that would be.
Right. They can't finalize design until they know the right of way impacts.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Sometimes, sometimes like historic properties can cause a little headache. Or utilities sometimes, they may need easements that they don't have, or vice versa, so, yeah, they try to get that all ironed out as soon as possible.
Okay, I'm sorry. No, that's right. We are slightly after 2. So unless anybody has anything last words that they need to share with us, I would say. Oh, I see Steph has some last words there. Welcome to your new edition.
Thank you. This is the Brentwood Assistant Representative.
All right, well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you everybody for coming. Yeah, Lucy.
Dave, I just want to note that I did send to the RPCs this morning the update to the public involvement process and the notice of funding opportunity for the National Scenic Byways Program.
Okay, thanks, Lucy. Forward that stuff for the TAC. All right, well, thank you everybody for coming, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you, bye.
Thank you.
Anyone's an interesting area, look, 33.
It's not around.
Frank, Dan, see you guys in a couple weeks.